Well, greetings everyone, and welcome to another episode of our WCNFluencer podcast. I'm your host, Christopher MacLellan, and goodness gracious, St. Ignatius, I have two old friends who were quite young. How did I do okay on that
Phew,
Kelly
that
and
was a
Deb?
relief. Thank you.
I
I was
I'm very
worried where it was going
conscious.
for a second there.
I have four older sisters, so I was trained well, and now I can consider the two of you two younger sisters. How does that sound?
That's perfect.
Yeah, it's been a while since we've chatted.
It has, and it is with great anticipation that we're so excited to be here today.
Yeah, and we've been talking about this on and off for a couple of years, and now that the Whole Care Network University is in, I can't believe it's been a year already since we've been up and running with the network, and after a few phone calls and a number of chats and maybe a tickle or two, Kelly and Deb are joining the Whole Care Network University with Nourish for Caregivers. This is exciting.
It is exciting, and it does take quite a bit to get three calendars all synced together to be able to sit down for a little bit of time, but it's all good.
It's kind of like, playing that dart game where you just keep throwing the darts and say, well, maybe this day will work or maybe this day will work. But Today's the day that it's worked.
Yes.
So it's
Praise
great
God.
to visit again with the two of you. So sometimes it's hard to balance when there's three people on at the same time. And I'm very respectful of people's time. But Deb, I'm going to go start with Kelly first because she's first on my screen. So
Hey.
I think that was a permission to say yes. Okay. So Kelly, let our listeners and our viewers know a little bit about your background and the great work that you're doing in the parishes and in the Chicago Archdiocese.
So I wear two different hats. I am the Director of Adult Faith Formation at my parish, and that is actually where I met Deb when she came in and asked if she could do a workshop on caregiving. And we had just done one on end-of-life issues, so it certainly made sense to have her come in and speak about caregiving, only to find out that that was a huge need in our parish, and it wasn't just something that could be a one-time workshop, that it needed to be an ongoing ministry. So that's where the birth of Nourish for Caregivers came from. Her caregiving story resonated with me because I too am a caregiver. My son, when he was 5, was diagnosed with a brain tumor. So chemo, radiation, surgeries, all sorts of fun things. He is now a 25-year-old, for the most part medically boring and medically boring. But he does have learning differences. So we are continuing to see where his place is in the world, since he can't read or cannot write, but he understands things. So he is a delight. But that's my caregiving journey and how I came to be here.
If I could interject this, and I hope this is the right word, there's a misnomer out there that caregiving is all about seniors.
Yes.
And I mean, you're a perfect example of a parent who, has a special need child, and how that can grow from there, and the special nuances in and around caregiving. And there's hundreds and hundreds of thousands of parents just like you out there that find that connection to where they feel where they don't feel alone, and they know that they can talk to people like yourself who've been on that journey.
Exactly. There's many similarities between all types of caregiving. And there's also some differences and some unique, everybody's journey is unique, we could say.
Right.
But absolutely. And I think it's very important to acknowledge and recognize the lifelong caregivers,
right,
as they're going through as well too.
And I think it kind of, it kind of resonates with me as I look at what we've done on the Whole Care Network, and it's through story sharing where diversity meets the road to collaborate on a common cause. Mm-hmm. And you connected with Deb between her story and your story, and then Deb and I connected. Deb, has it been almost 10 years?
I think it's been about 10. It may be a little longer.
I think a little bit longer too. Yeah. And while time goes by, and there's gaps in our visits from time to time, but when we visit, it's like we've never missed a beat.
Well, and Chris, I think, you impressed me tremendously when you were just coming out of your caregiving story. And you were sharing that with the world, and the documentary and the stories that you would share resonated with me and inspired me. And, one of the misnomers, you were talking about misnomers. Another is that people like myself, people who are a nurse, I'm a nurse by training,
Right.
people who are maybe in the healthcare professions or have cared in some capacity, that caregiving is easy for them. Guess what? It's not.
It's not.
It's not. And, that's where, I fell into the trap of thinking when my mother-in-law was diagnosed with head and neck cancer that I could snap my fingers and do this job just perfectly fine. Thank you. And, clinically, from a nursing perspective, I did all of the nursing tasks, if you will, very well. However, big however there, I was not prepared for the emotional
Right.
and the spiritual toll that it took on me, which is really what led me in Kelly's story to go to my local parish, my church, and reach out to see where we could help others who were going through this journey. Because if I was struggling as a nurse,
Right.
then there had to be so much else out there in the way of frustration and struggles and needs.
That's so very true, because, and I'm kind of projecting here onto Deb, is for healthcare providers, nurses, doctors, CNAs, anybody that's professionally involved, all of a sudden it hits home, and the emotional impact of caring for a family member is, I would have to say, would be much different than caring for a patient.
It totally changes the dynamic. And in some cases, I actually looked in the mirror and thought, wait a minute, did I forget everything I ever learned about being a nurse? Because when the emotions are involved, all of a sudden you're asking yourself questions and doubts that if you were in your professional role, you wouldn't think twice about.
You wouldn't think about it. Right.
I think the other part of that too is that so often those nurses and doctors and CNAs or therapists are caring where their job is, and then they're going home and caring as a brother, mom, a daughter, whatever it may be. So they have, as Deb, you've talked about before, the double duty caregiving, and that takes a toll too, in a different way than, an accountant or a teacher or someone like that. And who's still juggling a lot, but it's a different role.
The role's different, and I think too the thing that was really shocking for me is while there's a lot of resources out there for caregivers, one of the things that I found I really needed that I didn't have was something that would spiritually nourish me, sustain me. The role of faith in any caregiver's journey is I believe so critically important, and it's one of the reasons why, as you shared, Kelly, that we started Nourish, because we wanted to integrate that spiritual component as well.
It is so essential, and I think you just came up with the perfect word: nourish. Nourish the soul, nourish the brain, nourish the body. Because caregivers, no matter if you're caring for a child or your parent or your spouse, we need to find that nourishment in order to be refreshed. And that usually comes from like-minded people who understand the journey. Because I really believe that there's a strong ministerial component to caregiving. And I also think caregiving is the one social issue that brings people together from a very diverse background. Because caregiving's in every neighborhood, it's in every culture, office, it's in every business, it's in every parish. And I'm kind of digging back into my Catholic roots here, which is fun. But I remember back into the mid-90s when the Parish Nursing Association really started to take off. And while I've been out of that conversation for a number of years now, I see such a vital role that parishes can play for caregivers within their community, because that church is all about community.
It's about community and building those relationships and allowing people to come together where they can encounter, as you were just saying, Chris, others who are going through the same journey and can encounter their faith, encounter Christ, so that it becomes more than just, this is what I have to do, but more, this is what I am called to do. And they begin to see.
Thank you for, because we're all called to help another person.
Yes.
I think that's no matter what faith base that you come from, that message is the same. We're all called to be present, especially in time of illness. But it's not easy.
No. And that's why we journey it together. That's why we journey it together. Why we tell our stories, as you were talking about earlier, Chris. That's why we share this, share this together. Yeah.
Right. And I think the two of you have also come up with something that I know it's very valuable. I just wish I would have had it like 10 years ago. Stress. Caregiving is stressful. As meaningful as it is, it's stressful. It pulls at every emotion of a person, the spiritual, the financial, the physical. It's a stressful experience. And you've kind of created a course here that you're going to be displaying on the whole Care Network University that can really help people deal with stress. So who wants to take the lead on that?
I would love to start by sharing, but I think Kelly and I together can jump in on this. It's an immersive experience that, Chris, you've given us the opportunity to create on the whole Care Network in the university. And what we really want to do is to help caregivers really take a step back, and because you're so focused on a daily basis, primarily on the person you're caring for, to step back and take a look at yourself, to maybe go a little bit deeper into understanding the things that do cause stress for you and some of the ways in which you can begin to address those. Now, one of the things that we love to talk about are families with stress. And families, for many, can be stressful, the relationships, the dynamics. And one of the things we love to do, and I really hope as people join in on, taking our course, that they come to get a better understanding for personalities and the strengths and the weaknesses that we each carry, and how to maybe take those strengths that could be annoying at times to some of us and use them for good and not compete with them to diminish the stress.
Everybody comes to the community with different talents and skills. And I think one of the, if I could paraphrase here, it's allowing people to share their talents and skills in a way that's comfortable for them, that makes the community, the team, a little bit better.
Yep. And recognizing that everybody's level is different, and everybody's commitment and participation, and being able to recognize what those are and accepting them, and also then building on what may be, as Deb said, the annoying parts might actually be a strength, and how can we recognize that and allow that to flourish for the good of the person that you're caring for. So there's so many neat aspects.
And that's what it's all about, Kelly. It's about the person that you're caring for.
Yes.
And I think we get, oftentimes, as I've talked to people over the years, they get frustrated. Well, my sibling, why isn't she doing what I'm doing? And I said, well, she doesn't have the same talents and skills that you do. What talents and skills does she have that you could utilize? And I think when we're able to have those open and honest conversations, then the expectations change, and the level of frustration kind of goes down by like 95%, because you know what that person is capable of doing and willing to do. Not everybody can do the same chores.
Right. And I think you brought up a good point, and that is the idea of communication and how you're communicating and when you're communicating, and keeping those lines of communication open, and revisiting things that have been discussed previously. So there's many aspects to it, but communication is certainly a big part of that you touched on there, Chris.
So give us a sneak peek at the course and tell us what we could expect to learn. And I'm excited to take it myself.
Well, one of the things we do in the course is we start out after we take a look at all these different aspects of things that can cause stress is to take a stress test. And let me tell you, this is a different stress test than what you typically find online, because it looks at you not only from the practical things that make you stressed or the emotional things, but also spiritually how stress may be creeping into your soul. But then we also do a little fun test with colors and personalities to help us explore.
I love that. Yeah.
To explore how our personalities play into our caregiving experience.
Mm-hmm.
We also have exercises and tools that you can use that will help you, what we call, Kelly, living it out, a challenge to really live it out every day and to give you that roadmap.
And that helps you to be very intentional about, okay, I experience this, I learn this, I know my stress is here, I know that my personality is this, so what? But that living it out really helps you to say, okay, intentionally I'm going to do this and I'm going to implement it this way. So it really just, so it becomes not just something, okay, I went through this and I did this, but it actually begins to make an impact on who you are and how you're going through your caregiving journey.
Chris,
it's kind of like setting a daily intention for yourself.
Yes,
it is. And one of the things I want to go back to, Chris, is you were talking about how we see our caregiving experience. By the end of this, what we hope everyone can walk away with is that you see your caregiving experience as something that's holy and sacred.
I love that. It is. Let me get my seminarian juices flowing today. So, yeah, it is holy and sacred. There's no greater honor bestowed on us than to care for another person, especially when life transitions.
Yeah. Stepping into recognizing the dignity of every person, and especially that person that you are caring for. I'm sorry, Deb, you were going to say there.
No, I would invite everyone, even as you're listening now, to take just a split second or two to look down at your hands and think about how often do you really look at your hands, and think about what those hands convey as they care. And that's where you'll encounter the holiness and the sacredness as you really start paying attention to the love your hands communicate.
You're going to get me crying because I'm thinking how special it was to hold Richard when he died.
Such a gift.
It's an honor.
Mm-hmm. It's an honor.
It's been 10 years that I've still get verklempt. So
but
he would like me saying verklempt.
And that's the holy part, Chris. That's right. The holy part.
And I think in the scheme of things, the scheme of caregiving, because it really can be a scheme, and those intensive days, and we're not really paying attention to our own health and well-being, and the frustration, to be able to take a step back and kind of understand where our stress is coming from, so that we can deal with it better. I think this is essential, what you've created here.
And just being able to recognize it, and as you said, to be able to take a step back, and then because as you reflect on it, then it becomes something that you can, manage isn't the right word, but become able to work through and work with, as you're going through your caregiving, and then it opens up choices and opens up opportunities, as opposed to just continuing to grind through time after time.
I'd also like to add that we also want to challenge through this coursework and then everyday life to look at stress not always as negative.
Yes.
Now that sounds that sounds a little like, what are you talking about here?
Those are opposites. What are you talking about?
Some of the most important changes I've ever made in my life for the good came out of stress punching me right in the gut. and this stress sometimes calls us to pause. Stress calls us to look at things perhaps through a different lens. And stress can be good if it's not causing us harm.
Right. Mm-hmm.
It can be good because it's that flag that's saying, hey, all is not good and right in the world. You need to be doing something.
You need
You
to take
need
a
to pay
step back.
attention to this and switch. What's off kilter here? Let's get back on track. And especially, to speak to the spiritual, it's oftentimes the stress that really we see in our spiritual life and needs a recalibration as God hasn't changed, but we've moved a little bit. So being able to refocus on.
And again, it comes back. It's just funny how it just all comes back to the stories, to the stories that we share. And that on our spiritual pillar on the Whole Care Network, it's, while it has a flavor of being faith-based, but we certainly respect everybody's faith background. It's through these stories that people share and convey that really allow people to connect with others on a spiritual level that allows them to understand, oh, you mean, there's somebody else out there like me who just is very stressed out and wants to just walk away from this. And how did they deal with it? Well, it's through these stories, it's through these courses that people find that comfort. They find that I just love but the hands, looking at the hands and what that means, where the comfort is, and the softness that we hope that everybody's hands have in order to continue on that journey.
It's truly kindred spirits.
Oh, goodness. I haven't heard that in a long time, but it's so true. Mm-hmm. We are all kindred spirits because, goodness, there's no strangers when it comes to caregiving.
No.
It's
that
caregivers,
sense of shared.
Yeah, it's all shared.
It's
goodness.
Community.
And I said at the beginning of this, the best podcasts are the ones when the host doesn't talk a whole lot. And I've talked much more than. Oh, that's right, because I'm in a comfort zone with the two of you.
There we go.
Yeah,
and we feel the same way in that it's amazing when the stories come out, Kristen, as you're sharing yours and Kelly, and it just naturally it flows. And I know that one of the reasons we're excited to be on the Whole Care Network is because we can be a part of this. We can be a part of this energy and the community and being there for others who are on the same journey.
Yeah, and I'm just tickled to life to have to not only know the two of you, but to have you a part of the network. But I would be remiss if I didn't really ask both of you a little bit more about to talk a little bit more about the work that you do with Nourish and all the different programs that you have there and how people can access. While we'll have all this on your landing page on the Whole Care Network, you have just a wealth of wonderful content available on Nourish, and I'd certainly love for you to talk a little bit about that.
So as we were saying, Deb and I connected with the workshop and realized that it needed to be an ongoing ministry, and just recognizing that, as we've been talking about, getting caregivers together to be able to share their stories, to be able to accompany one another in the journey. But it needs to have some structure to that, because sometimes different people will be able to share more than other people. But if you have a little bit of a curriculum and a little bit of a structure to it, then there is that sense of being able to move from one place to another. So move from being isolated and alone into this sense of recognizing the blessings and the gifts and that come with caregiving. So our Nourish curriculum are caring for a child with a disability or elder care, and really looking at all the topics that pertain to caregiving, advocating, seeking help, the spirituality of asking for help, or family dynamics, or stress, or some of the different topics we've kind of touched on along the way today. But that's kind of in a nutshell.
It was a very good nutshell.
Thank you.
The other thing we do have that goes along with that as a companion is the Caregivers Companion, which is a book that we were blessed to co-author. That's also a journal, and that too is a way for caregivers individually to come and spend and sit down a little bit and reflect on their caregiving journey and find support and comfort.
I think one of the things you'll really hear is this idea of reflecting, but really taking that time that and I think this is so much of what the Whole Care Network is about is taking time to really be present in with others, but with yourself as well too, and being able to reflect on what is caregiving and how is this a part of me, and how am I able to move and to grow and to be more than who I was at the beginning of this. So it's a strong opportunity for me too, so to speak.
Because it is a life-changing experience for more than just one person.
Exactly.
What terrific work, the two of you. Well, this isn't work. This is giving back to the community.
Yeah,
it is. And we're both still caregiving, Chris. We're still on the journey. And, we tremendously value the time that we have with our fellow caregivers, because we continue to learn and grow every single day.
Well, it is such an honor to not only have the two of you a part of the Whole Care Network, but to have you as friends as well. And I just love that we're going to continue the journey together and find more ways to be present to caregivers and while they're in the midst of caregiving and after caregiving ends as well. So let all of our viewers and listeners know how they can get in touch with you and learn more about Nourish.
Well, certainly the website, it's www.nourishforcaregivers, all one word, .com. And on there's contact information on how to reach out to us.
And we'll have all the contact information on Deb and Kelly's new landing page on the Whole Care Network. You'll just do a little search for Nourish, and we'll be looking forward to having your course featured on Whole Care Network University and on the landing page and on the Whole Care Network, and I'm sure on Nourish's website as well. Kelly and Deb, always great visiting with you.
It's great, Chris. Thank you so much. Very
Thank
fun.
With the work that the two of you are doing, you are definitely a WCNFluencer. It's so great to visit with you.
Thank you, Chris. Thank you for just the time together today.